our weight loss goals, our fat loss goals, our body composition goals, our performance-related goals, our health-related goals are only as effective as our ability to prioritize sleep. Welcome to the show where we help you make smart nutrition simple. If you want proven nutrition strategies to help you build a better body and create the energy to show up for your family without overly restrictive and unrealistic dieting, then you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy this episode. So you're doing everything right and you're still not losing weight. And what is the reasoning behind that? Invariably, what we see time and time again when someone's expressing frustration around not being able to lose weight despite quote unquote doing everything right is they're obviously not doing everything right? Or else the scale would be moving. And what that usually comes down to is they're over-consuming calories. And as much as we would like to blame factors like our thyroid or like our metabolism or like our food quality or our exercise or following the wrong diet, at the end of the day, it still comes down to calorie balance, time and time again. And so anything that we can do to effectively learn how to manage calorie balance is going to, in most cases, help us move the needle. And so what the conversation becomes under those circumstances is, well, let's get clarity around what are you actually currently doing? Do we have enough data to make informed decisions? And do we have the ability to truly understand what it is that you're doing and perhaps not doing, right? Are we effectively tracking progress, right? So maybe daily scale weight, or are you measuring, once every 3 weeks and then you're getting all riled up around the fluctuations that invariably are going to occur depending on all of the factors involved. Are you tracking circumference measurements? Are you looking at pictures? And so really the reason you're not losing weight is, like I said, more often than not, just coming down to calorie balance. And so how do we put some principles in place and some fundamental pillars in place to teach you how to track your calorie intake and truly understand how the calories are adding up? Because you might be doing everything great from Monday to Thursday, and then you hit happy hour Friday, and then Saturday's brunch and out with the boys, Sunday's hangover recovery meal, and more beer watching football, and then you're back in the, back on track, quote unquote, back on track on Monday. And that's usually the case, is we just have this massive invariability of behaviors throughout the week. And so once we can create some consistency, help you drive some more awareness around how consistent you're being or not being, and then collect some data markers around those factors of how much movement are you getting? Are you training? How frequently are you training? How many calories are you consuming? Then we have the information to then be able to say, hey, now look, you've been more consistent, things are moving, or look how inconsistent things are. Do you understand now why the needle's not moving? And now why you don't have to stress so much around why nothing's happening when you fully understand why. And so for us to be in an ownership role like that is what we strive for, is to give you the autonomy to be able to be in a position to create awareness and then to make decisions based on the data that is being provided. There's a really interesting connection between sleep and weight loss. And what we continue to realize, what we continue to learn, what research continues to support is the profound role that sleep plays in all of our metabolic functions. Like you name it, any aspect of cellular health, of our biochemistry, of our physiology, sleep plays an integral role. It's literally the most anabolic or kind of building and recovery tool that we have. And so what I would say is that our weight loss goals, our fat loss goals, our body composition goals, our performance related goals, our health related goals are only as effective as our ability to prioritize sleep. And we see this very clearly in research studies that look at people who work night shifts, people who work swing shifts, people who work third shifts. So anytime we're disrupting our natural circadian rhythms, and our circadian rhythm is our natural hormonal fluctuations that align with the cycle of the sun, right? And so you can imagine we wake up in the morning with the sunlight. The sun's coming up, we naturally wake up, we are energized ideally, and as the day goes on, our energy levels start to dwindle as the sun's going down, and our sleep hormones start to rise. Right now, our energy hormones, for simplicity's sake, are what we call cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It's a good stress hormone, but a lot of times it gets a bad rap. And then our major sleep hormone is melatonin, again, for simplicity's sake. And so you can imagine this inverse rhythm where cortisol goes up in the morning and down at night, melatonin goes up at night and then back down in the morning. And again, these hormonal rhythms are very attuned to the cycle of the sun. And so we've all experienced jet lag, and we've traveled multiple time zones, and we get a disruption in these natural rhythms because the sun's rising and falling at different times relative to what our body's used to. And so it creates this disruption, which you can feel it in terms of your energy, this hangover that you're experiencing. And what happens more physiologically with these disruptions in sleep, and we see this in research that shows even with one night of inadequate sleep, so I think it could be like one night of 4 hours of sleep, well, all of the sudden we're going to see an increase in insulin resistance, decrease in blood glucose regulation. We're going to see a decrease in cognitive function and decision-making capabilities. We're going to see an increase in hunger and cravings. We see a decrease in androgenic hormones like testosterone, as an example. And so we get all of these short-term fluctuations in hormonal control based on our lack of sleep and inability to recover and repair. And so you can imagine if we're going multiple days in a row with lack of sleep, which many of us do based on work stress, travel schedule, maybe just the phase of life that we're in, and we're out partying a lot. Well, we're not truly recovering, and so we're getting all of these disruptions, which again is affecting our blood sugar regulation, our insulin regulation, our ability to burn body fat, the propensity for us to store more body fat, our ability to lay down new muscle tissue. The list goes on and on and on. And so if you're really zooming out on this, you can imagine through artificial lights and constant stimulation, we're making our body think it's always daytime. And so because of that, we're constantly secreting cortisol, again, stress hormone, good stress hormone, but it's keeping us awake and alert and in this sympathetic, stressed out state. And we're suppressing melatonin, our rest, recovery, parasympathetic, calming hormone. And that is massively disrupting our overall health, to say nothing of our ability to simply be in a fat-burning state. And so that's the biggest thing with sleep and weight loss. The first thing that we do with clients before worrying about significantly dropping calories and significantly ramping up exercise is we have to account for, okay, do we have normal sleep rhythms in place? And if we don't, that needs to be prioritized first. Otherwise, we're going to be wasting our time. If you're trying to lose weight, but your sleep sucks, fix your sleep first. Everything else will get better. Your hunger and cravings will go down, your energy will go up, you'll have an easier time supporting lean muscle mass, you'll have an easier time burning body fat, you'll be able to think more clearly. The list goes on and on. Elevate 2024 is coming. Join us on October 26th in Scottsdale, Arizona for a powerful no rules health revolution. Elevate is your chance to break away from quick fix diets and to learn proven strategies to master your health. This full day in-person workshop brings together expert coaches, business leaders, and a thriving community ready to inspire and challenge you. If you love what you hear on this podcast and you want to fully immerse yourself with the tools, clarity, confidence, and community to transform your life, both in and out of the gym, then you need to be in the room with us. Early bird tickets are on sale now for a limited time. If you want more info, just click on the link in the show notes or head over to bodysystems.com/elevate-2024 to secure your spot today. Intermittent fasting is definitely the weight loss miracle, and everyone should intermittent fast. Just kidding. Intermittent fasting can be a useful tool to help us control for calorie intake. And that's full stop. Seems to be the most powerful aspect of what intermittent fasting does. Now, there's a lot of talk around different forms of intermittent fasting and cellular health and autophagy and longevity and insulin management. And frankly, I can't speak intelligibly to any of those. I'm not familiar with any of the research. It seems like, in my opinion, there's a case to be made for the role that intermittent fasting can play in our long-term health, simply because it's something that we've been exposed to through our human evolution. Physiologically, we are built to go through periods of feast and famine. And it's really remarkable what the human body can do and how the human body can maintain homeostasis under these conditions, which is what's so phenomenal and profound, to the degree that you cannot eat for multiple days in a row and you can maintain relatively stable blood sugar levels, right? You can grossly overeat and you can maintain for a short period of time, and you can maintain relatively stable levels of blood sugar. And when you're fasting, you don't massively burn through all of your really valuable fat stores, which a lot of people get upset about, but it's a survival mechanism. We want to hold on to body fat because, again, it's a very valuable resource from an energetic standpoint. At the same time, we can grossly overeat for a period of time, and we don't lay down massive amounts of body fat that could theoretically be in line with the amount of calories that we're consuming. And so it's super interesting, in my opinion, to think about kind of just from a evolutionary standpoint, the role that intermittent fasting has played, the role that just fasting in general has played in our evolution. From a weight loss standpoint, though, simply from a weight loss standpoint, we do know very clearly there's no advantage on paper from intermittent fasting compared to any other diet. In other words, intermittent fasting, whichever the form that we decide to do, whether it's 16-8, we're fasting for 16 hours, we're eating for 8 hours, maybe we're doing alternate day fasting, so we're eating every other day, fasting every other day for a period of time, maybe we're doing a 24-hour fast a couple times a week, whatever it is. Again, just speaking to weight loss, there doesn't seem to be any advantage because what we're doing is we're creating a calorie deficit. So we can do that any number of ways. We can cut carbs, we can go keto, we can do Whole30, we can go plant-based, You can do the McDonald's diet. It doesn't matter. As long as you're controlling for calories and you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. Now, in my experience, the biggest differentiator is especially with intermittent fasting, is for some people, it just works really well relative to their lifestyle, right? And even me personally, I can absolutely justify spending a few days a week with an extended fasting window, because for me, it ends up just being easier to not think about eating, and or if calories are low, it's easier to just keep my meals in a smaller window rather than having to eat a smaller amount multiple times throughout the day and potentially experience more hunger. And so under those circumstances, it definitely can make sense for the individual. And that's typically the way that we leverage this tool, because it is a tool just like keto can be a good tool, or perhaps carnivore could be a good tool, or plant-based could be a good tool, or doing a protein-sparing modified fast, or doing some sort of, 3 or 5 day kind of detoxification cleanse, something like that. There's a lot of opportunities to explore different avenues of dietary intervention, which is awesome. But with intermittent fasting, it seems to work really well for people whom they might travel frequently, in which case we will just not eat in the morning if they have a flight. And then maybe we'll wait until they get where they're going, and then they can have maybe a protein shake as their first meal, and then a reasonable, or bigger dinner to load in the calories, especially if they're entertaining. And it still helps them create the calorie balance, the flexibility and freedom that they want and need, and is relatively easy to do once you train yourself to do it. So I think it's so important that people just think about these things of like, there's no panacea. It's very nuanced here with all diets and dietary interventions. And so if it's something that you're considering, just think how it fits within your lifestyle, and is it something that's sustainable for you? At the end of the day, I do recommend that everyone intermittent fasts to the degree that they give themselves at least a 12-hour eating and fasting window. In other words, if your last meal's at 8 p.m., try not to eat again until 8 a.m. And I think for most people, that can be a good hard rule that also gives us the opportunity to not end up eating too many calories late at night, which can be very problematic for a lot of people. So if nothing else, hey, maybe it's a 12-hour fasting window that you kind of make non-negotiable. And if you end up eating a later dinner or going out, then maybe you don't eat your first meal the next day until a little bit later, and that would naturally help you curb for calories. Are there certain people who shouldn't fast? And that's a really good question. So what I've observed, and in communicating with a number of doctors in our network, I generally do not recommend intermittent fasting to most women, especially perimenopausal women, or women who have poor blood sugar regulation. What we typically see is that first meal of the day is pretty important to set the stage for blood sugar, we'll say blood sugar success throughout the day. And so for a lot of women, again, in my experience, and especially for women who wake up and they drink coffee, when we talk about those stress hormones that are secreted first thing in the morning, well, coffee's it has caffeine. Caffeine's a stimulant. Any stimulant is going to drive up cortisol, again, which is a stress hormone. Again, that's not a bad thing. But for women with poor blood sugar regulation, the higher the cortisol goes, and cortisol is what we call a glucocorticosteroid, meaning it's a stress hormone. It's a fight or flight hormone. And so when we're running from the proverbial tiger, right, our body wants to do everything it can to shuttle sugar into our muscles for fuel. And that's what cortisol does. Cortisol helps artificially drive up blood sugar so that our muscles can absorb the sugars and use them as fuel. And so for women who might not be able to regulate blood sugar as effectively as they should be able to, then we're getting this constant influx of stress hormones, this constant fight or flight response, which over time is going to contribute to other hormonal dysfunction, potentially thyroid dysfunction, what we call pituitary hypothalamus axis dysfunction, and a lot of people refer to it as adrenal dysfunction, but it's basically your body running on stress hormones too frequently. And so for those people, I strongly discourage waiting to eat that first meal into later in the day. In fact, waking up and usually within 30 minutes or an hour, making sure you're eating a meal that has decent amounts of protein. Usually we talk about trying to hit about 30 grams of protein for women and probably consuming some carbohydrate, whether it's fruit, whether it's oats, some form, whether it's a smoothie, something like that, some form of carbohydrate from a blood sugar standpoint as well in that first meal makes a huge difference. Fuels the body, fuels the brain, and then creates that nice stable blood sugar so that they're going to be less likely to go for that 10 a.m. frappuccino, bagel, donut, candy snack when they feel like those blood sugar levels are starting to crash. And so I think what a lot of people need to realize, and this goes for men too, and another reason why I'm not a huge fan of intermittent fasting is because oftentimes that first meal of the day really sets the stage from like a neurotransmitter and brain chemical standpoint for success later in the day. And so the other problem with intermittent fasting for some people is that they go half the day without eating, but then they're ravenous the rest of the day. They are wanting to eat everything in sight and end up grossly overeating even within that shortened eating window, and justify it and rationalize it as, well, because I fasted, I deserve to, or I can eat a lot more food, frankly. Of course, weight loss comes down to calorie intake, and so that's problematic. Well, there you have it. That's it for this episode of the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. If you have questions that you'd like us to tackle in an upcoming episode, then we can't wait to hear from you. So you can submit your questions directly by just messaging us on our social media. That's at Body Systems Coaching. Or you can just message me personally, ben@bodysystems.com. Appreciate you guys listening, and I will catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening, and if you found this content valuable, here are 4 ways I can help you in your nutrition journey for free. 1. Grab a free copy of my Fat Loss Fix Guide at fatlossfixguide.com. 2. Join my free group at smartnutritionmadesimple.com. 3. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at smartnutritionmadesimpletv.com. 4. Leave a 5-star rating and positive review so that we can gain access to more nutrition experts ready to share their knowledge with you and ultimately help more people make smart nutrition simple.